The sky was still dark when Imama Hashim packed the last of her things. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded her scarf, her heart pounding like a drum in the silence of her room. She looked around, the familiar walls, the framed verses her mother had hung, the perfume of her sister's cupboard, all of it would be left behind. A wave of fear passed through her, but faith was stronger. This night was not about leaving home. It was about leaving falsehood behind. Her decision had been made weeks ago. Her parents had tightened their control, locking doors, cutting her off from friends, and watching her every step. They wanted to break her, to make her renounce the faith she had chosen. But every prayer she whispered made her resolve firmer. Now, before dawn, she would escape. A light knock came at her window. It was Jamila, her loyal friend. "Imama, it's time," she whispered nervously. Imama nodded, pulling on her black abaya, wrapping herself completely. She opened the window quietly, the cool wind brushing her face. Her heart prayed with every breath, "Ya Allah, protect me." Together they slipped into the night, their footsteps light against the wet ground. The city slept. Only the call of a distant dog and the hum of streetlights broke the silence. They reached the corner where a car waited. Inside sat Salaar Sikandar, eyes half asleep, cigarette between his fingers. He looked at her, puzzled and irritated. "I hope this isn't another one of your religious experiments," he muttered. Imama's voice was calm but urgent. "Please, just drive. I'll explain later." Something in her eyes, fear mixed with conviction, made him start the engine without another word. The car rolled into darkness. As the city lights faded, the silence grew heavy. Imama sat with her hands clasped, whispering verses under her breath. He had helped people escape before, but never a woman who looked like she was running from the world itself. After some time, he asked, "You're really doing this, aren't you?" "Yes," she replied softly. "My faith is not a crime, but here, believing what I believe has become one." He smirked slightly. "You sound like those people who give up everything for an idea." Imama turned toward him, her eyes glowing in the faint light. "Not an idea," she said, "for truth." Her words hit him unexpectedly. For the first time, Salaar couldn't find a clever reply. He looked away, pressing harder on the accelerator. They stopped outside a small house near the edge of the city. The sound of the Fajr Adhan rose in the distance, a call that seemed to break the night apart. Imama stepped out, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't understand what you've done for me today. But one day, maybe you will." Salaar watched as she disappeared inside, swallowed by the faint morning mist. Something inside him felt strange, not pity, not admiration, but something deeper that he couldn't name. It was as if her faith had left a shadow over his own emptiness. He drove away without looking back, but her voice, her calmness, and her courage stayed with him long after the night was gone. Inside that small house, Imama was greeted by a few kind faces, people who knew her struggle and were ready to help. Her journey was far from over. She would still have to face fear, isolation, and pain, but she also knew that she had crossed a point of no return. For the first time in her life, she felt free. Not safe, not certain, but free. She whispered a small prayer of gratitude, and as the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, she smiled. Somewhere, far away, another heart, Salaar's, stirred with confusion, unaware that his own journey toward truth had quietly begun that same dawn. The sun had risen, but for Imama Hashim, it felt like a new kind of darkness. She had left her home, her family, and everything familiar behind. Now she stood in a small, quiet room. The world she had entered was simple, bare, and strange. There were no golden mirrors or silk curtains like her old house in Islamabad, just plain walls and a single prayer mat in the corner. For the first time, she was truly alone. Her hands trembled as she unpacked her small bag. A few clothes, her Quran, and a letter, the letter she had written to her parents before she escaped. She knew what it said would break their hearts, but she also knew she couldn't live a lie anymore. "I am not lost," she had written. "I have found what I was searching for, truth, faith, and peace. Forgive me if you can." I am not your enemy, only your daughter, trying to follow the right path. She folded the letter carefully and placed it under her pillow. The thought of her parents' anger and grief made her chest ache, but she whispered, Ya Allah, give them peace and guide them. Meanwhile, in her old home, chaos had broken loose. Mrs. Hashim had fainted when she realized Imama was gone. Her father's pride and anger filled the air like smoke. How could she shame us like this? He thundered. She's destroyed our honor. Servants were questioned, phones rang endlessly, and neighbors whispered. Everyone had an opinion, but no one knew the truth of Imama's heart. Her brothers searched for her everywhere. They checked hostels, friends' homes, even the hospital where she used to volunteer. But Imama had vanished like wind after a storm. Her family's pain turned into bitterness. They could not understand how their obedient, gentle daughter could take such a step. Far away, in a quiet street, Salaar Sikandar leaned back on his couch, staring at the ceiling. The events of the previous night wouldn't leave his mind. He had driven a girl, a stranger, out of her home into the unknown, and she hadn't even asked for pity. He remembered her calm voice, the way she had said for truth. He didn't believe in much, but something about her faith unsettled him. He lit another cigarette and tried to brush off the thought. She's just another crazy idealist, he muttered to himself. But deep down, he knew she wasn't. Her courage had shaken something in him he didn't even know existed. She was everything he wasn't, faithful, fearless, and pure. He didn't tell anyone about her, not his friends, not his parents. It was as if the memory of that night belonged only to him. Days passed. Imama stayed with a kind woman named Arifa, who had helped many converts like her before. Arifa treated her gently, giving her space to pray, to rest, and to find her footing again. But every night, when Imama lay down to sleep, she thought of her family, of her mother's warm hands, her father's proud face, her brother's teasing voice. She wept silently, afraid her sobs might reach the walls. Yet in her heart, there was a strange peace, too, a peace that came from knowing she was finally where she belonged. In another part of the city, Salaar's life went on as usual. He attended classes, partied with his friends, played loud music, and pretended not to care about anything. But Imama's words echoed in his mind at odd times, when he was driving, when he was drunk, when he stared into the mirror. He began asking himself questions he had never dared to before. Why did life feel so empty? Why did nothing matter? What was he really running from? For a man who claimed not to believe in anything, he was strangely haunted by a girl who believed too much. Weeks later, Imama learned that her family had announced her disappearance publicly. Rumors spread that she had been kidnapped or brainwashed. Some said she was trapped in a cult. Others claimed she had been seen abroad. Imama knew that the world would never understand. Faith was not madness, it was awakening. But explaining that to those who refused to see was impossible. So she focused on what she could control: prayer, learning, and patience. Her heart remained strong, even when loneliness pressed down like a mountain. Sometimes she thought of Salaar, the man who had helped her escape without asking for anything in return. She wondered if he ever thought about that night, if he ever asked himself why he had helped her. But she didn't know that, miles away, Salaar was beginning to question his own life, and that her journey and his were slowly moving toward a single point. A point neither of them could yet see, the moment when faith would meet emptiness, and the light of belief would touch even the darkest soul.